Hey guys, you ever hear about Live for Love TV? I want you to like, share and subscribe. Check it out, it's a bomb.
Welcome back to Live for Love TV. Today is the 28th day of the second month of the 23rd year inside the 21st century. Hope everyone is doing extremely well out there. Now, today I'm going to talk a little bit about the new Bob Marley biopic movie that's out there. Yeah? Or biopic or whatever they call it. But biopic movie that's out there in the cinemas. Now, the first disclaimer is, I've seen the trailers, I've seen a lot of the interviews, but I haven't actually watched the film yet. So I'm doing this for a particular reason, pre-movie watch. And if I do watch the movie, and I do think that I have to retract or add that's of significance, then I'll come back and do a part 2. But I think part 1 on this, what I'm going to say, will be enough. We all know Bob Marley. Those of us who know him know that he's an icon. He's more than a musician. He's an icon. He stands for so many things to so many different types of people that to just call him a mere musician would be an insult, or would basically, maybe not an insult, but would be a little bit disingenuous, yeah? So he's an icon. Now this movie, and we've been told this by Ziggy Marley and everybody that could listen, and on the feature part of it where it speaks about it, this movie is set between 1976 and 1978. Now here's the first red flag to me right there. You're doing a movie on an icon and you're limiting your part of that movie for 2 years. Why would you do that? Well, who do we say has had the biggest input in this film? Well, it seems like it's Ziggy Marley and it seems like it's Rita Marley. So those periods basically highlights those two people in this movie, yeah? And that's why I think they've done it. And that's what's sad about it. And the worst part about it, as I was saying to someone today, is that when you make a movie about an iconic figure or a superstar or somebody who's moved people around the world, you must not make a movie and leave out such important parts that somebody else could come and do a movie and put those parts in and blow your movie right out the water. That is just what you call dropping the ball on a major scale. And that's what I think they've done here by trying to limit these 2 years in Bob Marley's life. To leave out his early beginnings, his first hits, even though I haven't seen it, to leave out people like Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer, who would say there would be no Bob Marley without these people. To leave these people out. To leave out Cindy Breakspear. I believe the 1976 Miss World from Jamaica. I don't think people realize how much of a big part she is in his life and in our understanding of this man. I think people they're not able to go back to that time. I was young at that time, but I can remember it. To leave out Rhodesia turning to Zimbabwe under Robert Mugabe, and the headline act being Bob Marley and the Wailers. How massive was that? How can that not be a movie all by itself? If this 2 years is important, that's a movie all by itself. Africa Unite. So there's so many massive parts that makes this man an iconic figure. And him getting shot, which is also part of his life, is not what would make him an iconic figure. And even coming back and singing and doing the One Love concert that later on brought Siaga and Manley together, shaking hands on stage at the end of those 2 years. I mean, talk about scratching the surface. That is pretty sad. When you watch people like Charlie Parker, you see his whole life. You see the film Ray, you know. That's amazing because when you watch a film Ray, it goes all the way through his life. When you see the other guys, Malcolm X, all of them, none of them are limited to that time period. And some of you may say, well, they made a film the other day on Martin Luther King and they called it Selma. But that was just about Selma, one particular march. And there's been many, many films made about Martin Luther King that covers his life. So it's very, very sad that they would try to make a movie and limit it here, because no matter how good the acting is, no matter how good, even if you believe the what do you call it, the translations are, the way they speak and the patois and all that. I don't know if that's good or bad, but no matter how good it is, by doing this, you've completely dropped the ball on who this man is. You see, sometimes you have to be a bit dispassionate when you make movies on people. It's not good for me to make a movie on my sister or my brother or somebody like that, or my dad or my mother. There's so much more to these people than I would ever be able to see. They come from so many different angles. So you need someone who wasn't too involved to get into this movie and to be able to play a good part on it. Not somebody like we're hearing Ziggy Marley was on the set almost every day. This is why you get the 2 years. And it's funny that those 2 years that they made of Bob Marley's life is when he's actually in Bob Marley's life. It's kind of strange, isn't it? Why didn't they make 2 years of his life in the early 70s? Or in the late 70s, close to 80s, when he did Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. Not that he wouldn't have been in his life, but the parts would have been different. So we have to understand that these movies are not made to really give us a true or a better understanding of who this man was. These movies are made to sanitize who they want us to see this man to be, and that's very sad, because if a man stands and is free-spirited and stands up as he wants and does as he wants and speaks the truth from his mouth, you need to let that fly. And wherever it lies, it lies. And if there's X amount of baby mothers, then there's X amount of baby mothers. That's who the man is. You don't push these people to the side as if they're immaterial people in his life. For those of you who are old enough, and even if those of you are not old enough, you have to understand what Miss World represents. Miss World represents the most beautiful woman in the Western world. That's a title they're crowning this woman with. That's a title. And when they found out who the boyfriend of this Miss World was, the whole world caught fire. That was similar to when Muhammad Ali, the late boxer Cassius Clay, changed his name and became a Muslim. Caught fire across the world. Some people were completely upset and would never accept it, and other people were happy and over the moon because they were Muslims or whatever. The same with Bob Marley, because before that, Rasta was pushed to the margins. Rasta was not respected. Rasta was a musician, smoking whatsoever. But could Rasta man hold on to the most beautiful woman in the Western world? Nobody would have suspected that. And when it happened, believe me, a lot of people started to put and don the locks after that. Go back and look to 1976, 77, 78 and what was happening in the world. The rise of the rent-a-dread on the beach. European women coming down for this wonderful rent-a-dread that they can get on the beaches in many countries, not just Jamaica. They can get it Gambia, Trinidad, anywhere. Where did that start? Who can show me where that started? Why did Europeans all of a sudden start to see the Rasta man as a sought-after person? Before he was just the sisters in the ghetto, the sisters downtown. Even the sisters uptown didn't want anything to do with Rasta at that time. But this Rasta man is able to hold on to the most beautiful woman in the Western world. That's not what I'm saying. That's what they were saying in their newspapers. And this is out of the movie. This is why I say there are so many things that make this man an icon. There's so many things that make him an icon. And you can't leave out the powerful things, because what you don't want to happen, if you were part of that movie, was somebody to come along in a future date and make a movie, truer movie, with more of these things involved, and to blow your movie out the water so nobody ever wants to watch it again. And they realize you were actually portraying somebody the way you wanted the person to look, and not the way the person themselves portrayed themselves. We lived through that period. Yeah, we lived through that period, so we got a flavour. Many of us who were, of a certain age, of a flavour for who Bob is. Whether you sat down on the corner and talked with him, or you listened to his music, or you watched his interviews in real time. So there's too many important things that they've left out. So I'm going to, probably talk about it after I've watched the movie. Actually, sometimes there's a little bit in me, nagging thing in me, is saying to myself, I know enough about Bob Marley. What am I going to get out of a two-year biopic about Bob Marley? What am I actually going to get out of it? What are you going to get out of it? Obviously, for those people who don't know Bob well, who were afraid to talk to Rasta, was afraid of the culture, afraid of Jamaican culture, afraid of the militancy and the tough down kind of attitude, maybe they'll get something out of it. Maybe it'll make them feel good. I went to two in the UK, what was it? Two musicals of Bob Marley, I think in 2022. They were excellently done. Trust me, they really were. And they, believe me, they didn't hide those parts of the story. And it was just a musical on the stage. And I'm sure it wasn't exactly correct in everything that they did on there, but it was excellent. And I loved it. You can't leave these parts out of Bob Marley. There's too many important parts. There's too many important people. And I know a movie of an hour and a half to 2 hours can't do everything, but it can cover things. It can't just go past. And to make the excuse that you're depicting 2 years of his life. Why would you depict 2 years of an icon's life? What's so important about any particular year of an icon's life? What's so important? Because when you're looking at these iconic figures, we have to look at what makes them up. You have to look at who's their surroundings in the early days, in the middle passage of their trod, and then who's there at the end. All of this has to be told in order to get a true picture of how this person is developing. None of this, I think, is done if you're going to just leave it down to 2 years. So I don't know. I'm not trying to rubbish the movie in any way. I'm sure it's well acted, and I'm sure they've done a great job. Apparently they put $70 million into the movie. That's a lot of money. So, there must be good parts in it. There must be good things about it. But for me, they've dropped the ball here. And I'm just convinced in the back of my mind, no matter what happens to me, I'm convinced in the back of my mind, somebody's going to put some money in and they're going to do a proper Bob Marley movie one day. And this movie is going to be forgotten. Mark my words. I say that with no knowledge of it, but just to think of how much is left out. A man paid his own fee and his own band's fee to go to the inauguration of Robert Mugabe in 1980. Because even though he was invited, things fell through. He knew how important that period in time was. He decided to put money in his pocket, get the whole band over, get the whole entourage behind him, and he was there. And he dubbed it in a Zimbabwe. I wonder if they told that in the movie. Very important part of the man and his history. Anyway, that's it for now. Take care. See you guys soon. Live for Love TV.
Like, share, subscribe to Live for Love TV.